In the next section, we're going to explore account types. There are two types of accounts on the Google Cloud: user accounts and service accounts. We're going to begin by exploring user accounts. And to kick things off, we're going to start with a definition of a member. Once identified on the system, the caller of a service is known as a member, and members are uniquely identified using an email account. Google highly recommends that member accounts are protected with two-factor authentication, where access is granted based on something the member knows, as well as something the member possesses, for example, unique codes which are sent to a mobile device. In addition, it is also strongly recommended that password policies are enforced in order to ensure that members create more secure passwords. In addition to members, we also have domains. Domain represents a company's internet domain name, and this on the Google Cloud also represents all accounts within an organization. Information residing within an on-premises LDAP directory service can be replicated with identity services in the cloud for authentication and authorization purposes. In addition to domains, we also have groups. Groups are a collection of accounts, and these accounts are typically represented using an email address. Groups enable us to assign roles to members. Groups do not have credentials. They are not used to establish individual identities, and groups can include service accounts as well as user accounts. There are also a couple of commonly used identifiers on the Google Cloud. For example, all authenticated users is an identifier for any accounts. It's generally not available for every service on the Google Cloud, and anonymous users are typically not included in the all authenticated users category. In addition to all authenticated users, we also have the all users identifier. This is a special identifier that refers to all cloud users, including anonymous users, and it is also not available with every service on the Google Cloud platform. Having explored identifiers, let's explore admin accounts. There are two types of admin accounts, and we're going to start off with super admins. A super admin account is an account that's created when the organization is being created. The word super obviously means that this is the account with the most privileges on the Google Cloud. It's definitely not recommended for day-to-day administration. The super admin has access to all organizational resources. In other words, every single resource across all of the projects within the organization. The super admin has irrevocable permissions to create, delete, and update anything across the organization. It is also a very important account for admin recovery activities, for example, resetting accounts for other privileged users. And it is extremely important that this account is protected using some form of multi-factor authentication. In addition to the super admin account, there's also an organizational admin account. The organizational admin account is recommended for day-to-day activities or day-to-day operations. Keep the super admin account separate from the group of organizational administrators. This enables us to follow the principle of least privilege by assigning roles which are more closely aligned to the day-to-day activities of the member. It is also important to protect organizational admin accounts with multi-factor authentication systems. And with all admin accounts, it is important to configure cloud operations to generate alerts when these accounts are used in case of a security breach. Having discussed user accounts, we're now going to move on to service accounts. We're going to start with an overview of service accounts. Service accounts identify machines or applications on the cloud, which essentially means service accounts incorporate two components. They've got the who component that represents the member and the what component that represents the resource, because service accounts are a resource on the cloud with an identity. And as with any other member, service accounts can be assigned one or multiple roles. And by assigning roles to a service account, we're essentially granting permissions to the resource that will be assigned that service account. Service accounts also facilitate authentication between machines and applications on the cloud and cloud services. In order to authenticate, machines and applications need to run with a service account identity. And this enables the application or the machine to perform the activities permitted through role assignment. It is also worth mentioning that service account, just like any other member, has an email address that uniquely identifies it. And one of the benefits of using service accounts is the ability to use Cloud Identity Access Management in order to control who can use and assign service accounts. Services made available by Google on the Google Cloud are assigned Google Managed Service Accounts, and these service accounts are automatically granted the relevant roles necessary for the services to perform their function. In addition, user-managed service accounts are created for and on behalf of users every time the user enables an API in order to have access to a cloud service. Let's explore service account keys. Service account keys can be used to identify a caller of a service, and applications typically send service account keys when making a request. A valid key is necessary in order to access the capabilities of a service account, and these keys are typically downloaded when the service account is created. On the cloud, there are a number of default service accounts, and the keys for these default service accounts are usually created and managed by the cloud provider. And unlike default service account keys, custom service account keys are generated and managed by the end user. And this means that the end user is fully responsible for managing and securing the public-private key pair. To ensure the integrity of the authentication process, the cloud provider maintains a copy of the public key. The private key, on the other hand, cannot be retrieved by the cloud provider. Where necessary, cloud users can also take advantage of provider-managed keys, which reduces the administrative burden. Let's move on and explore scopes. Scopes are a legacy method for applying permissions to default service accounts, and it enables permissions to be granted at an instance level to cloud resources. And on the Google Cloud, permissions can be granted using Identity Access Management, which, by the way, is the preferred method, or scopes, where default service accounts are in use. Let's end our discussion on service accounts by exploring best practices. One of the best practices for managing service accounts is to rotate user-managed service account keys in order to mitigate risk. It's not a good practice to delete service accounts where the application or the machines using those service accounts are still in use. And it is highly recommended that separate service accounts are created for each service. This enables each of those service accounts to be audited, thereby providing more fine-grained visibility of the activities within the cloud. And in order to make cloud resources more intuitive, consider assigning user-friendly names to service accounts that reflects the use as well as the permissions assigned to the service accounts. Whatever the case, do not check in service account keys into a source code management system, such as a Git repository, and do not leave service account keys within the downloaded folder. Always protect your service account keys. It is also a best practice to treat each application component as a separate trust boundary, and achieving this on the Google Cloud requires the assignment of unique service accounts to each application component. It is also highly recommended that the use of service accounts and keys is audited. This enables you to be able to perform forensic analysis when things go wrong. And finally, it is very important to securely manage access to APIs as well as limit who can create, update, manage, and delete service accounts. This concludes our discussion on account types. In a subsequent module, we're going to explore the account types we've discussed in this section on the Google Cloud Console.